Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 132. We're talking coaching commitment, injury updates, a knockout blow, and counting down the weeks to our competition opener. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hey guys, welcome back. We are coming to you a day earlier than last week. Joe Reed, who's obviously one of our regular listeners, often gets in touch with us, was good enough to point out on Twitter that we were cutting it a little fine last week, and he's absolutely right. I think we got our episode out at about 6 p.m. on Sunday, but we did promise you one episode a week, and so today we've found an extra 24 hours. We're slowly moving back towards a regular schedule. And today, of course, as always, I'm joined by Mr. Wood. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, thanks, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. It's a funny kind of time with the rugby. It feels like there's not a lot going on, and then you and I kind of sit down before the episodes to talk about what are we going to discuss, and we always seem to find things that didn't feel like were there. Hopefully we're not doing too much repetition, but we are in a bit of a sort of this, I guess a 2-3 week period post-season pre-World Cup warm-up where, unless the headlines jump out with interesting stuff, it does feel a little bit like there's not much to talk about, but we seem to have found a few bits, so.
Well, we have. It's kind of funny because I think a lot of the listeners are similar to us, are quite hardcore fans. I mean, from our point of view, we're not necessarily the most knowledgeable of hardcore fans, but we're definitely hardcore fans. And I think our listeners are the same. So stuff that typically won't get huge headlines, perhaps elsewhere, is still like really interesting to us.
Momentous.
Exactly. And I'm pretty confident that our listeners will find it interesting as well, because especially judging by the messages we get, most of our listeners are pretty clued up on their old rugger.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, obviously, last week we obviously read out the message from Andrew Moore, and we didn't go through it all because obviously he was talking about his kind of World Cup squad prediction, and we will, as we said then, come back to that. That'll get its own dedicated episode, not today. But he came back again. He replied to us. One of the things we did cover off the back of his last message was obviously all the chat about SIPs, and that's one that's going to continue at least until we find out what the squad's going to look like. But he says, thanks for the readout last week, guys. Just a few more points on the Cipriani conundrum. Sips has played behind a Gloucester pack this year and a Wasps pack in previous years that's always given him front foot ball, which, as everyone knows, is a lot easier to play with, and in order to try different plays. Compare that to George Ford, who's been playing behind the worst pack Tigers, maybe not the worst pack on paper, but certainly the way they've performed for years, nearly always playing on the back foot, but was the player to make things happen when he was playing and when they were performing well. I know everyone thinks he's no good at tackling, but he very rarely misses a tackle. Admittedly, he may give a few yards in the process, but never shies away from fronting up, which is what Jones likes. If there was another 10 to go, he says, I would want to see Marcus Smith taken, as the experience he would gain this time around would be brilliant for the next World Cup and he could learn from the likes of Farrell and Ford. He also says that last week we mentioned if Jack Noel was injured, maybe Cipriani would go. He says he would take Alex Good instead of him, as he feels he'd offer more than Cipriani to the camp as a whole. He goes on to say, anyway, thought this might give you some food for thought. As always, keep up the good work. P.S. I hope you will carry on the pod after the World Cup.
Oh, cheers, Andrew. So let's cover this a bit, because this is quite interesting. He makes really valid points, doesn't he? Because George Ford has had a great season, and like I said, behind what has been, quite frankly, a bit toilet of a pack at Leicester.
His message alone has almost made me rethink whether I would take Cipriani. Whether I would consider Cipriani an important member of the 23.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. That's the thing. When you read his message and it comes out, you're like, it's hard to argue it. And well done, Andrew. Anyone can win an argument with facts, but that's not what we're about, to be honest.
Facts and knowledge. What's that about? Yeah.
Facts, knowledge, and a great understanding. Yeah, anyone can win that. But I think I've still got Sips. I just think there's something. Well, I think everyone knows this. There's something he's got that others don't have, and that's where I've got Sips ahead. Like it, just because. If we do find ourselves in a quarterfinal, in a semi-final, in the shit, and we need something magical, that's my go-to man.
I suppose, though, the question is, how do we categorise Owen Farrell as a fly half? Because in the past, he was the guy that could make things happen from nothing.
Was he, or was he just the guy who would?
I think so, because I think George Ford was always the sort of the safe pair of hands. He would do a job. And Owen Farrell was the one that would create, have that vision and see that kind of long, flat, super flat pass that was going to put someone straight into space in a way one of our flyers would go and we'd score a try, or he'd see the space for the kick and put it through. And I'm not really sure what Cipriani does differently to that. I'm not saying he doesn't do what he does brilliantly well, but this message alone has made me go, if you've got a guy who can control a game on the back foot, which is something that we've seen England time and time again, when that happens, if that happens, they struggle. If you've got a guy that's spent a season proving that he's capable of still controlling a game in that situation, I almost feel like that's something that you need on the bench, so that if things don't go to plan, because plan A is obviously that we're going to have front foot ball, you've got that ability to bring him on and steady the ship. And you move Farrell outside him, and you've still got, you've got the options then. So I know this is a complete reversal of what we've been saying recently.
Speak for yourself here.
But I do feel a little bit like Cipriani and Farrell are quite similar.
I again,
and you're not necessarily going to change things up by. I quite like what he said here.
Yeah, I like what you said, and it does make a lot of sense. And what you just said does make sense because, if you're getting front football and everything's fine, and then you're like, actually, we're not getting front football, we're getting back football, who can we rely on for that? And George Ford has done it this season, then...
That's the thing. Do you want to take a Cipriani and say, look, you've spent the entire season with front football doing magical things, we're now on the back foot, we're going to expect you to come in and change things? Almost unproven in that sort of scenario.
Yeah, I do.
And if you've got the front football, chances are you don't need to bring on a Cipriani to change things up, because we know how strong the England backs are with front football.
I think I do. I think I want to back us to be able to get that ball. I think Sips can still produce stuff that the others can't. It's a great argument, and it has. And actually, but not just that. I mean, that certainly played a part in it. Not the message from Andrew certainly played a part in it, but also the way George Ford's played all season. I'm finding it hard to leave him out. What I'm starting to wonder is, depending, and we'll go through this obviously nearer the time, is there room for the three of them?
I mean, there may well be, and as you say, it will be a case of looking through the squad and seeing. I think what we will do when the time comes is we'll put together a squad. And we'll go through it and decide, who in this squad would we be okay with getting rid of, and I think it's going to be a tough call.
Yeah.
And I feel like given what we've seen of Eddie's commitment to Danny Cipriani over the last couple of years, I can't see it happening, to be honest.
It's no. I agree. I think Danny will be in a wider squad. I think. And I hope it's the case. I think genuinely the training squads and the pre-World Cup matches could decide. Owen Farrell's going, and rightly so. He is the best 10 and should be starting at 10. I think George Ford might be going as well. I think Danny Cipriani might be fighting perhaps with some of the centres. Not a Manu, not a Slade, but arguably a Tio or a JJ.
Then I could see potentially them looking at him as an alternative replacement fullback. But because he has played there before, and it's the sort of position that they might potentially move him into if they needed to, and then he's kind of there to cover if they need something different at fly half. But I don't, with the strength that we've got in the back three, I just don't see that either. And I mean, I guess what Andrew, or he's actually Andy, signed it off as well. So the thing that Andy said about taking Alex Good, I think we both agree. In fact, I think you said it last week that Alex Good for you is the guy that, given the option, would be the far better, certainly cover, if not starting, but that's never going to happen by the sounds of things, for fullback. But Eddie Jones, again, it's another example of someone that, for whatever reason, he just doesn't see it or want it or entertain it. But I do think it'd be hard to say I'm going to take Danny Cipriani as my cover for fullback and leave an Alex Good behind.
Yeah, this is. I know we've had this chat before, but I love this chat, and I don't care that it keeps coming up because it is an interesting one. We've got one Andy who's using well-reasoned arguments, knowledge, and facts to win an argument, and you using my own arguments against me. So, I'm struggling here, but it's a good one.
So unlike you, mate.
I know it's so weird. It's so weird. I normally stick to the plan.
Let's move away from it slightly, because otherwise we're going to sort of delve into the team selection stuff, and we do want to keep that back for its own episode. But yes, some really interesting thoughts there, Andy. Thanks so much for getting in touch with us again. I trust that you've reviewed us on iTunes. If you haven't, please do, and that goes for all of you guys. If you get the opportunity, we'd really appreciate it. It's how we get noticed. So get over to iTunes, rate us, review us, let us know what you think. Of course, you can always get in touch with us as well if you've got questions, or if you've got opinions on what we're talking about that differ from ours, or even just to tell us that you agree. And you can reach us at England Rugby Pod on social media, or englandrugbypod@gmail.com if you want to send us an email. Anyway, moving on. Just before we kind of really get into the rugby, I just want to pivot slightly. I know you're a big boxing fan. Did you watch the Joshua fight, or have you seen it since?
I've seen the extended highlights. Wow.
Tyson Fury, and you can kind of take whatever he says with a certain amount of salt. He thinks he's finished. He says he didn't want to be there, and he won't come back. And I watched this kind of little interview with Tyson Fury, and it didn't seem like a kind of an arrogant. Usually it's just some arrogant bullshit that he's spouting. At this, he just said, "Look, I've been around boxing my entire life, and there's a look in a boxer's eye," and Joshua just had this look of he didn't really want to be there. It's since been said that at the end of the fight, when it was called off, he almost looked relieved.
It's a tough one. We won't spend too long, but bearing in mind Tyson Fury, king of comeback, and to me, and I've said this a while, I think Tyson Fury is the best heavyweight out there. The next fight is massively telling. I just couldn't see that. I agree with what Tyson Fury said, and actually, straight after, Tyson Fury sent quite a nice tweet out saying, regroup, champ, no one. Whereas you'd expect him, like Deontay Wilder did, you'd expect him to like throw the knife in and just be like, gutted, you lost your shit. I always said you were. But it'll be interesting. The rematch, which I believe is happening November, December time, will be interesting. And Ricky Wilson, if you're listening, you piece of shit, I bought you tickets to Joshua Klitschko. You owe me tickets to the next Joshua fight in England. Just saying. And I believe I bought you ringside. So if you could get me ringside as well, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's my personal, but I will send this episode to Ricky just so he hears it.
Just so he knows. What do you mean you'll send it? Of course he tunes in every week.
Of course he does. It's not like he works.
Is the rematch, just before we move away from it, is the rematch, well, it's must win, right? Where does Joshua go if he fights the rematch and loses?
If he doesn't win, I'm in the Fury camp that he's done. I don't think he'd retire. I think he'd have other fights, but I can't see a way back for him after that.
Do you think, though, after being such a kind of important champ?
I just think he'd have to have so many fights, and he'd basically have to start from scratch.
Yeah, I'm not sure he'd do it. He's got to have a fair amount of cash in his pocket. He's a nice, personable guy, it appears. I think he will. I think he'll win the rematch, and I think he'll get his belts back, and I think the big fights will be back on. But it will be an interesting one to watch.
I hope so. I think he's a brilliant fighter, and I think he's an amazing ambassador for the sport. So I hope so, but we'll have to wait and see.
I trust that you. I don't need to ask Fury Schwartz.
Fury will destroy him.
Destroy him. He's told him first round.
I don't know if it's first round. Fury doesn't quite have the same knockout punch, but certainly not that Wilder has, and not that Joshua does. I think Fury will stop him in 5 or 6.
Fair enough. Well, we'll report back and see how accurate you were. Anyway, back to the rugger bugger down it.
Quickly before we move on, sorry, and just to show how normal a podcast we are, it's just started raining. My washing's outside. Can I pause for 30 seconds to bring it in?
What do we think, guys? I think that's probably a no.
That's a no. Well, I'm just going to quickly run. It's just moving the washing thing in, but I'll be with you in 30 seconds.
We're counting.
28 seconds I had that as?
I think we're all just surprised to hear that you do your washing, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So we've covered our boxing for the year. Let's move on. So something I wanted to talk about. I noticed I was reading through all the latest headlines, and Brodie Retallick, after this World Cup, is being given he's not being given 2 years off. He's going to Japan for 2 years. He's kind of just to move his family somewhere different, I guess, just ease down on the sort of the intensity.
I think Kashish may play a part, a bit of Johnny Cashington.
Yeah, of course. And the plan is that he'll be back in 2021 to prepare for the 2023 World Cup. So my question to you is this something that England should be encouraging?
100%. I 100% think it's a good idea.
Because it kind of... there's two trains of thought here. So on the one hand, it creates more depth, because obviously in the meantime, you've got to find people to replace these guys. And they get their shot. On the opposite side of that coin, is there potentially an issue for the incumbent players, the ones who are covering, in that they kind of almost know in the back of their mind, and I appreciate, that there's always the chance that they would usurp the person that's gone off to wherever it might be to earn the cash. But in the back of their mind, they're thinking, in the case of Brodie Retallick, the guy's coming in is thinking, this guy's coming back in 2 years, and then he's basically just going to kick me out of my position.
No, so I disagree with that. And the reason I disagree is looking at there was a point where I couldn't imagine somebody taking Jonathan Jones' place. And I mean, fair enough, that was injury. Now I couldn't see someone moving Henry Slade out of that position, who got his chance. And also, as a player, you're not going to be like, oh, damn it, that guy's gone away. I'll get however many England caps, 25 grand a game, but I may lose my place. I actually think the person who goes away, it's up to them to win their spot back, which we all know anyway. And I think it will just add depth. I would love to see the likes of, realistically, it probably wouldn't happen, and you maybe don't need it. Like Owen Farrell, I don't think you need it too, but maybe even maybe even a Marrow. Just to see, is it possible for the guy to get better? Yeah, great. Maybe a Marrow, maybe someone like a Jack Noel or whatever. I'm just making
let's say that Owen Farrell, he's he's probably the first name on the team sheet whenever we pick a side, right? Let's say Owen Farrell decides to go off and play, I don't know, wherever it might be, France, Japan, maybe even Super Rugby somewhere, for 2 years, and get the experience of playing, a different style of rugby in a different place. And if you're, I mean, I guess, you've got Marcus Smith, so maybe he's someone who steps up and gets that experience, that opportunity. But Owen Farrell's the kind of guy that it's all well and good saying he's going to have to play himself back in, he's going to have to earn his place back. But he's so good, he's like the Johnny Wilkinson of 2003. Don't you just feel like he's going to walk back into the side?
Yeah, I think with an Owen Farrell, that's probably the case. But then, what's the downfall to that?
But it's the Owen Farrell that is the player that you want to see this from. It's those guys that are almost guaranteed places that you want to say, do you know what? Go and have a couple of years off. Go or do whatever it is you're going to do.
Do you know what? For me, it's not necessarily those guys. For me, it might be someone like a Marcus Smith who want to see, look, you're probably not going to be getting many starts because Owen Farrell's there. Marcus Smith, you go ahead, you change your game, you add a bit more to your game, come back. What do you add? So I think one, you can add a lot that way, or others say it wasn't Owen Farrell, Marcus Smith then has that experience.
Yeah.
And you've got, I think it's a positive. Let's look at James Haskell.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe he was a better player after he went and did like sort of Japan, France, New Zealand.
He was, for sure. And do you think it's the sort of thing that someone like a Joe Marler, who obviously felt that it was all just too much, like the sort of the intensity of the camps and everything else, would benefit from? Or do you think, because I suppose I suppose what he's doing is almost similar in theory. He could come back in a couple of years. Obviously, he's gone about it slightly differently in that he's dropped out just before a World Cup rather than just after. But maybe maybe he should have stuck around until after the World Cup, then said, "I'm having 2 years of not playing international rugby." Even if he chose to just stay with Quins, I'm going to work on family and getting my head right, and then I'll come back in 2021, and almost it be a kind of a planned sort of sabbatical.
Yeah. I know what you mean. I like the planned sabbatical. Like Dan Carter did it. Richie McCaw had some time off, didn't he? I think.
Well, I feel like if it had been something they'd done with Stefan Armitage back in the day, so that it wasn't this pressure of you have to give up the money if you want to play for your country, and instead it had been go to France, have a couple of years, but then come back to us, and it's pre-planned. Because that's the key, isn't it? It's sort of saying we're letting you go because you're committing to coming back.
Yeah, exactly, and that's where I think it's more a younger player, more an up and coming player sort of scenario.
But rather than saying to the player, if you choose the money and your family and your future over us, that's it for you, which is kind of the way that England approach it at the moment. Whereas in New Zealand, it feels a lot more like them saying, that's fine. If you're committed to us, there's a World Cup in 2023. We need you back by 2021 to make that happen. You've got 2 years. If you want to go and do that, we support you and we look forward to you returning. Is that something that would work for you? And then negotiate that with the team. I'll come to you for 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And I think it's, like you say, a Joe Marler is probably not right because sort of settled with a young family thing. But maybe someone like a Marrow, it is ideal. He wouldn't necessarily have the sort of the intense pressure of constant England camps, constant tours. He can have a couple of years where he can just play his rugby, learn some new stuff, come back, and then he's ready to go. Hopefully he's got some new great experience. I think another thing to bear in mind where it's slightly different is I think the Premiership is one of probably the most competitive domestic leagues in the world. So although, yes, they'd gain experience elsewhere and great experience elsewhere, I think the Premiership, you do get that good competition, that good experience. But I'm all for it.
It feels more like a cash thing, doesn't it? But I suppose that's important too, because we've mentioned it before, and the bottom line is, of course, you should be putting your family and your future first. It's a short career in the grand scheme of things, and to turn down, what could amount to double the salary, an extra 2, 3, 4, 5 years effectively on your career in terms of, what you're on right now, earning double or triple for the next 2 or 3 years. It's adding to how long you're earning money for. And so you kind of want to say, look, we, as the RFU, as English Rugby, whatever, we recognise that you're going to have to put your families first, and so to try and let you do that without it sort of negatively impacting on England, and without us changing our rules, this is a solution that would work, and it's that we would support you in going somewhere else to earn the cash, to have that sort of. I guess just the sort of the confidence to be able to say, okay, I'm doing what's best for my family without turning my back on my country.
I guess in theory you can unofficially do that now. You could, like, after the World Cup, someone like Teo, who's not, who I believe hasn't signed for another club yet, he could go and spend a season or two in France.
Yeah, you could, but it's sort of frowned upon.
Do you reckon though?
Well, I think unless it almost becomes like a sort of, England have supported the decision because there's an understanding. I think because right now, if you leave, you're not negotiating. I'm going there for 2 years and then I'm coming back to be in the World Cup. And there's almost like if you leave us now, therefore you're not involved in our next 2 Six Nations, you're not involved in our next 2 Autumn International Series and our next 2 Summer Tours, then you're turning your back on England. Why should we entertain? No one's saying it, but I feel like it's far better in New Zealand, the way that it's sort of almost not so much encouraged, but if that's what the player wants to do, it's supported in a way that I think England don't do at the moment. And maybe that's just simply it's a case of messaging. Maybe England just need to show the public. Maybe they may well be showing the players that choose to do this sort of thing the same thing. But I don't know. Just when you look at people like Armitage, it never felt like England was saying we support your decision and we want to support making sure that it works for us with a World Cup coming up. So this is what we're suggesting.
I think what was different with Armitage, though, no one was really looking at him as an England player. When he went, no one was thinking, oh, massive loss to England. It wasn't until he was actually away and he started playing how he did, where everyone's like, we want him for England now. So that's slightly different. Because it wasn't, he didn't go away and everyone being like, "Oh my God!"
You're doing that whole facts thing that you don't like.
Yeah, exactly.
So on that note, we're going to move on.
And actually, a good point to move on, because we're saying, so one of my points to that is a lot of it would be down to the coach, and I don't think a coach would be like, fine, he went away for a couple of years, sort of almost mugged off England, but I don't care. I want the best players. So. It's been said Eddie and John Mitchell are now, in theory, are set to continue as England's coaching team until at least summer 2021. Mm-hmm. And they said they've taken a change. Their policy has shifted from what was initially Eddie was going to stay there as a succession plan for the new coach.
Yep.
They're saying that policy has shifted and he's not necessarily, that doesn't mean I'm sure if he went out group stages, Eddie would struggle to stay, but they're saying he's not necessarily based upon performance at the World Cup. Is this good or bad? What do you reckon?
I think it's absolutely right. Like Bill Sweeney's the new RFU boss has come in and basically said, to put a caveat on his contract to tell him that he needs to achieve a minimum of this position is absurd. You put your faith in a guy to coach your national side. And, you have to treat the World Cup like any other kind of England performance. And, of course, you're going to kind of analyse and review the competition at the end. And decisions will be made off the back of that. But you don't want to go out before it even starts and say, we really want you to win the World Cup, but if you don't make the semis, you're out.
So, just to play devil's advocate, is there a level of defeatism as part of this? And by that, I mean... in my mind, and I am purely playing devil's advocate here, in my mind, Eddie was brought in with the single task, win the World Cup in 2019.
Yeah.
Are they now saying, oh, actually, no, don't worry, if that doesn't happen?
Whereas, no, I don't think so. I think that when Eddie was brought in to win the World Cup in 2019, but and whilst the belief exists that he can do that England can do that. I think it was always, no one ever thought, if we hire Eddie Jones, we will win the World Cup in 2019. It was never that. It was apart from us. It was never. It was never that kind of crystal clear. It was like that's what we want you to come and do. But you hire anybody, you want them to come and especially if they're making money for your company, you want them to make lots of money. You want it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I think I hear what you're saying. Like does taking away the sort of the caveats make it look like England are saying, we accept that it probably won't happen, therefore we're gonna kind of soften the blow a little bit. I don't think that's the case. I think a new guy's come on board and just gone, I'm not happy with having the guy that I'm putting my faith in to take England as far as possible, ideally all the way, to be told if you don't achieve X, you're out. It doesn't mean that if he doesn't achieve X, he's not out, but it does mean that it's not as simple as that. And I think that's right.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? For me, it shows more faith, I think, in Eddie Jones. To say, we trust him to go and do his job. That's why they've extended the contracts. John Mitchell, the same. They have said that John Mitchell is not a successor to Eddie Jones.
No, and I don't think John Mitchell should be a successor to Eddie Jones, and I get that. I do like it. Here's my genuine thing on it. If doing that makes Eddie and John Mitchell more relaxed and more focused on the World Cup, great. If it makes them take their foot off the ball a bit, like, okay, look, it's not quite as desperate now. It's not quite as imminent, but we have to be throwing everything, and they even subconsciously take their foot off the ball a bit, then I know likey.
Yeah, but I think you're talking about elite professionals.
Completely.
And in this case, you're talking about a coaching team that you have faith in to be able to kind of take the national side to the kind of the pinnacle of rugby, which is the World Cup final and winning it. And I think you can't have both. Like, either you believe that they're capable of doing that, in which case they're professional enough not to go, oh, you're telling me that I'm safe until 2021 regardless. Oh, I'm not bothered anymore. In which case they're not professional enough and they're not suitable for the job. And I don't think that's how they view them. So I don't think it's going to make a difference to Eddie. I don't think Eddie's going to suddenly go, oh, phew, I'm safe. I'm gonna relax and take my foot off the gas a bit. But I do think it's just one less thing for him to have in the back of his mind. Because it enables him to just focus on what he needs to do and what the team needs to do and what they're going to do as a group. So I think it's a positive. It's clearly something that different opinions are going to form around it. England in particular love to hate Eddie Jones when things are not going well. Love to love him when they are going well. So guys, get in touch. Let us know what you think. Do you think it's a positive that they've removed the caveats, or do you think that you would prefer to have him slightly more micromanaged in that respect?
So, in which case, bring it on. Bring it on. Cool. So, with that in mind, another thing we wanted to touch base on, which everyone knew it's the worst kept secret in rugby, but obviously Warren Gatland has been named as the next Lions coach and has categorically ruled himself out of the England job.
Yeah, why did I let your conspiracy theories detract from my original thoughts on this? I said Warren Gatland won't take the England job. He wants the All Blacks job. And of course, what he said is that he wants to coach Super Rugby, which is just code for the All Blacks, because he doesn't know if he'll be offered the job yet. Yeah, and you with your fake news convinced me that there was even the slightest chance that he might come to England, and we spent about 3 episodes talking about it. So shame on you, Dan.
So basically, what I'm hearing is you agree with me. After he does the Lions, he's going to be the England coach.
I think you need to adjust your volume.
Okay, maybe I'm mishearing you differently, but it's an interesting one. Ruling himself out of the England job so categorically surprised me. Like, I was half expecting him to say, like, the England job's not even in my thinking at the moment. All I'm thinking about is the Lions. But for him to say, I 100% won't be the England manager, did surprise me that he went that, just that full on with it. It's like, all right, Warren, screw you prick.
I mean, Eddie has mugged him off recently when he ruled himself out of the Lions job, of course, because he said it was an ambassador job and he didn't want to spend 8 weeks in a blazer. And of course, Warren Gatland has responded to that by saying, I don't know what he's talking about. It's one of the toughest jobs you can do in rugby. And so it's 2 totally different opinions on what the Lions job is all about. And to be fair, Warren Gatland is about to do it not about to, but in 2021, he's going to do it for the 3rd time.
Third time as head coach. And he was there in 2009 as an assistant coach as well.
And Eddie's never done it.
Yeah.
So, but Eddie has basically mugged off the job and Warren Gatland at the same time. And maybe Gatland's thinking, maybe he's too proud as well. Maybe he's like, I'm not going to risk taking a job where I have to answer to Eddie Jones for a kind of, I know that they've changed the rules now, but I don't know. And also, of course, now Eddie's committed until 2021 as well. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he just thinks time to move on. He has been in the Northern Hemisphere, Warren Gatland, for 30 years, and he's from New Zealand. So I totally understand. Like, if he wants to he's just saying, look, I'm getting old, and actually, I want to get back to my homeland.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of get what Eddie's doing as well. It's like in a bar, if you chat up like a hot woman, and then when they,
How on earth?
speaking for myself,
how on earth would you know this? You've never chatted up a hot woman.
Well, I chat them up, and then they reject you, and it's like, yeah, whatever. I don't want to be with hot women anyway. It's just walking around with hot women. I'd much rather just be with a dog. Yeah, it's a lot better.
That's what they say.
I really hope my missus isn't listening to this. Who of course, you are very beautiful. But it's Eddie's messing about there, as Eddie does. Warren, I think Warren's not messing about. I think he's saying England, no.
England what?
England, no.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. Well, he's ruled himself out, and I'm okay with that. I get his reasons. He wants the All Blacks job. I think Warren Gatland secretly doesn't see England as a step up from Wales, and I think he'll be kicking himself when England win the World Cup in 3 months.
Yeah. I heard Will Greenwood's podcast. They did an interview with Warren Gatland, which is actually really interesting. It's about lions, and it's really interesting. And he was chatting to Will Greenwood, saying,
"Is that the podcast where they always sit in a coffee shop and you spend the entire episode listening to coffee being ground in the background, or have they stepped it up a bit now and they've got a studio and everything?"
It's a different one. Yeah, it's Sky Sports. It's a studio one, and Will Greenwood's chatting to him, and Warren says, like, when England won the World Cup in 2003, like, were you all parading around with it? And Will Greenwood's like, no, Jason Leonard just took it, went and sat in first class while we were all in business class, and just sat there with the World Cup all by himself. And Warren's like, yeah, I'm trying to figure out when we win the World Cup with Wales, how we're going to hand that about. I'm like, Warren, easy, fella, easy. Behave.
Yeah. You've never beaten the All Blacks.
They have, but not recently.
Yeah, in the professional era.
Yes, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, moving on to two quite important factors. We briefly mentioned one of them last week, but injuries. Jack Nowell, his injury is obviously a concern for England. I haven't found anything to suggest that there's any comprehensive kind of what's the word? What is it that doctors do? Diagnosis yet. Have you read anything to suggest how close they are to knowing?
I haven't seen anything different on that, so I'm obviously working along the assumption that it is still as it was, and the chances are that it's going to be same time frame. And I think Jack Nowell will be back for World Cup. I really hope so, because I think he's a massive part of that World Cup squad. He kind of reminds me of almost a Josh Lucy, circa 2003. Like Josh Lucy just added so much that he wasn't necessarily the sort of Jason Robinson star, get all the headline player, but just his workload, his power, his just certain parts of the game where he can impact. And Jack Nowell reminds me to an extent a bit like that. So I think Jack Nowell is a massive person. The fact we haven't heard anything actually makes me a bit more relaxed. I think if we'd heard, if it was going to be longer and there was a threat, I think we definitely would have heard. Whereas if it's quicker, it might be like, it might be quicker, it might not. That's not necessarily huge news. But
I mean, worst case scenario, if he is unavailable, there is a certain irony in the fact that his injury resulted from a collision with Lazowski, who could conceivably be named in the squad in place of Jack Nowell. You know, he's one of the guys that if Jack Nowell was taken off the list, potentially could be added to it. It's unlikely, because I think you'd probably look at a Cock and a Seager, or and if he's not already there, and another winger. But it's an interesting one. I'm like you. I mean, I think we need Jack Nowell fit for the World Cup, and obviously, we just need to send him positive recovery vibes in the hope that he makes it back. But another one, of course, is Mako. Hamstring surgery, 3 months minimum rehab, they've said. I've not read anything to say that we know where he is along this road, but I'm assuming that he has had this surgery and that he is now in recovery.
Well, a few weeks back, I remember a thing saying he was going into surgery pretty much within a few days. So I assume that's happened. And I assume it started the recovery process. My worry with Mako is the first few weeks, I don't know, I'm not a doctor. Maybe we could get Pod Doc to help us with this. But I assume the first few weeks he'll be off his feet. Mako, for the love of God, please keep those KFCs just down to a reasonable level, okay? Don't come back and then have, on top of the 3 months thing, 3 stone to lose as well, because he is also hugely vital. And Mako
see what you've done there. Hugely vital.
yeah, it's unintentional, but I like it. Mako, again, the fact we haven't heard, I think it'll be the same. I think his recovery will be going. What I hope is we don't push him, because with Mako, I don't think we need to push him, and I don't think we need to test him early doors. I think if he's going to be fit, take him to World Cup. And if that means he has to play all the warm-up games to get match fit for the knockouts, so be it. But I hope we don't rush him back, be like, oh, he's okay, give him a game, and then he does his hammy again. Because, again, I think Mako's huge, especially with Joe Marler out. I think Mako...
Yeah, I mean, Marler has, as I understand it, said, of course, if England need me, I'm not going to turn it down.
Well, let's hope so.
But he obviously went on to say, but there's a lot of great players out there who are making themselves available to England, so he doesn't feel that it's likely that will come about. But yeah, it's good to know that he's not turned his back completely. I mean, best case scenario with Mako, he's going to miss the first 2 warm-up games, which is Wales, both home and away. He would then, best case scenario, be available for Ireland on the 24th of August and Italy on the 6th of September. England fly to Japan on the 8th of September. They play their opener against Tonga on the 22nd of December. Sorry, the 22nd of September. That's 14 weeks tomorrow is our opening game in the World Cup.
So 14 weeks. So bearing in mind he's probably had a few weeks already.
More importantly, it's 14 weeks tomorrow. We can play our opening game in the World Cup.
Yeah, that's it. That's good. That'll go quickly. That'll go very quickly. And Luce, sorry, just choking there. And Luce, who you know fairly well because she's your wife, she messaged the other day, didn't she, in our group WhatsApp saying about the English shirts actually come out in July.
They do, yeah. So Twickenham told me end of August, but I don't know where she got that information from, but apparently they actually come out on the 1st of July or the beginning of July. So I will be.
Why has she got more information than us?
I don't know, mate. She's clearly found a source.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Liz.
We will. I'm going to be getting my shirt early doors. Need to have it specially made. Make sure it's big enough.
Make sure it's big enough. You're not exactly lomming,
pick you up, aren't I? Pick you up a small one.
Just
extra padding in the shoulders.
Well, mate, I like to look good. But World Cup shirts, which are probably not necessarily what people tune in for, but
yeah, we're not selling them. By the way, this is not a plug. We're not getting paid for promoting them.
Well, we're not yet, but
no.
It's
although if since the RFU are obviously listening, do get in touch and let us know how we can. Anyway, that to me that's kind of covers what's been going on recently. There's obviously a few other stories out there, and I think you've done you've had a look at the under-20s just to see what they're up to in the World Cup.
Yes. So I think we won't go through. So a few things. Unfortunately, England haven't made the semis. The semis are Argentina, Australia, and South Africa, France.
Should their coach get sacked?
No. Because the under-20s was so close this year. And I don't know, because you and I chat about this a lot. Just because an under-20 teams win the World Cup, that doesn't mean we've now got a great next generation, because it just doesn't materialise. But one thing I really liked about the under-20s is how close it is. England beat Italy by 1 point. We beat Australia but lost to Ireland. Australia beat Ireland. Georgia beat Scotland. South Africa beat New Zealand. It's actually really close. And to me, that's good. We want World Rugby. We want these nations, the likes of Georgia and things, coming through. And Georgia look like they've got a pretty useful team. Like I say, they beat Scotland.
For them, it's much more of a feeder into the senior sort of setup, isn't it? So yeah, that's great for World Rugby. I think as well, one of the things for England, and I think one of the things where we need to give them a bit of credit is that actually, unlike in past years, there's quite a lot of guys, and Marcus Smith is a prime example, who should be out there, should be playing with these guys. But the fact is he's good enough not to be. He's good enough to be making himself available, albeit, a long shot. He's good enough to already be making himself available for the senior team. And bottom line is the under-20s is about finding out if any of them are going to be the next sort of superstars in the senior setup. So it is a positive that, as you say, it can be that close. A slight change, a pass a split second earlier, and we could have seen England in a very different position.
Yeah.
Even without someone as kind of crucial as a Marcus Smith, and obviously seeing him against the Barbars, and I know that's a different. You're playing a totally different side there. He was so instrumental in controlling the game. I can only imagine that the under-20s have missed him in this World Cup.
Yeah, definitely miss him. He's a good player, but to me, he is not an under-20s player anymore. To me, he is a
senior player.
Yeah, senior player at that pedigree, and the way he played for the Barbars and the way he's played for Quins does show that he is that pedigree.
So yeah, shame that they're out, but yeah, just keep doing your thing, and hopefully the game will continue to evolve. That's what we all want to see.
Yeah. So I think that's probably it, isn't it?
It is.
For this week. The only thing I want to actually add to this, and this is moving away from England rugby, but there was a Welsh youngster called Harrison Walsh who had a horrific injury a few years back. I think it was like 2015, where his knee just got absolutely nuked, and basically he became sort of slightly paralysed in his foot and his leg and not able to play rugby again. But he is now, there's an article about how he's going for the Paralympics in Tokyo. He's already set I believe it's a world record in his shot put for the Paralympics. And just say, good for you, mate. All the best. You may be Welsh, but you're still part of a rugby brotherhood. And just to see that sort of mentality, I think sums up rugby amazingly. And all the best, mate.
Very well said, sir. Guys, thank you once again for tuning in and listening to what we have to say. We assure you it's going to get more and more interesting as these weeks progress. As I said, only 14 left until England's opener in the tournament. And if you've got questions for us, if you have any feedback on the things that we've been talking about, or if you simply want to just get in touch and introduce yourselves, we're at England Rugby Pod on social media, englandrugbypod@gmail.com if you want to chuck us over an email. And if you get the opportunity, as I said at the beginning, it's how we get noticed. We want to try and get as many of you listening by the time the World Cup kicks off as possible. Get over to iTunes, rate us, review us, let us know what you think. That's how we find more of you to tune in and hear what we have to say. And I know some people will like it, some people will hate it, but you guys who tune in regularly, hopefully that means you do like what you're listening to, and we really appreciate the support that you give us. So please keep it up, and we will catch you guys next week.
Yeah, absolutely. We genuinely 100% do appreciate the support, and catch you soon, guys.